My name is Joan George, and I'm the Cultural Resource Specialist for the Crimson Solar Project. The purpose of this training is to inform you of your responsibility to protect any cultural resources within the project area, in compliance with the Conditional Use Permit, the Mitigation Monitoring Reporting Program, and state laws. Cultural resources have been identified in the project area, and the project has been designed to minimize impacts to these resources. However, previously unidentified resources may be affected during earth-moving activities, clearing, grading, drilling, and trenching. These require appropriate treatment and protection. Knowledge and practice of the measures and the procedures that I will discuss today is the responsibility of all on-site personnel. Violation of these protection measures can result in costly project delays, as well as serious consequences for the responsible individuals. Please remember the biological, cultural, and paleontological monitors are here to help you. Today I'm going to talk about the following: applicable laws and regulations protecting cultural resources, the history of the project area, what cultural resources are, and also show you some examples, and what to do if cultural resources are discovered. Some of the laws covering cultural resources are protected under federal and state law. The Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act of 1990 provides a process for federal agencies to address new discoveries of Native American human remains, funerary objects, sacred objects, and objects of cultural property intentionally excavated or inadvertently discovered on federal or tribal lands. The Archaeological Resources Protection Act, or ARPA, protects archaeological resources from vandalism and unauthorized collecting on federal land. Maximum penalties are a fine of up to $250,000 and 5 years in jail. Under the California Public Resources Code, it is a crime to disturb or remove archaeological, historic, or paleontological resources that are located on public lands, and it is a felony to abstain or possess Native American grave artifacts or human remains. The unlawful and malicious excavation, removal, or destruction of such resources is punishable by up to a $10,000 fine or both fine and imprisonment. These codes also discuss the procedures that need to be followed upon the discovery of Native American human remains. It is possible that human remains, burials, or cremations may be discovered in the project area. If this occurs, you must stop work immediately and notify your supervisor and the cultural resource monitor. Protect the area from all disturbance and do not inspect the material yourself. It is a felony under California law to disturb Native American burial sites, and this crime is punishable by imprisonment in state prison. It is important to realize that violations of the project's compliance documents may result in construction delays, fines, jail time, or loss of job. The project area is located in Riverside County in the Mojave Desert. The Mojave Desert is an arid, relatively harsh environment that has never supported large populations, although people have lived in the region for approximately 12,000 years. Prehistoric people hunted, fished, and gathered wild plants and seeds in this area. The Colorado Desert area of Riverside County is within the ethnographic boundaries of several different 18th and 19th century Native American groups, including Colorado River peoples, the Kachin, the Hachidoma and Mojave, and the Chemehuevi tribe and the Cahuilla tribe. Historically, the project area and region has a rich history in transportation, such as historic trails and the Southern Pacific Railroad, mining, homesteading, and agriculture, and military training activities during World War II and the 1960s. Cultural resources include both prehistoric and historic artifacts, objects, structures, or locations and areas culturally important to a group of people. Cultural resources are an important part of American and our state's heritage. Cultural resources that may be discovered in the project area include prehistoric artifacts such as stone tools, grinding stones, and stone arrowheads, ceramic sherds, as well as prehistoric features such as trails and hearths. Stone tools include rocks that have been used as tools to kill or butcher animals or process plants. Stone cultural resources also include the chipping waste created by the tool-making process called debitage. They can range in size from as small as your fingernail to larger than your two hands put together. This is an example of a scraper, which was used to process hides or food. We also have a finely shaped biface or arrowhead. These were used for hunting animals. Groundstone tools, like manos and matates, and mortars and pestles, were used to process plant foods. They usually have a smooth surface. This is an example of a hand-sized mono and a large mortar. Metates and mortars were often left upside down to protect their grinding surfaces. These may appear like ordinary rocks, especially when they are partially buried. Ceramic vessels were used to store water and food. Ceramic sherds can range in size from as small as your fingernail to as large as your hand. Complete vessels may also be discovered but are rare. Ceramic sherds vary in color from tan to red. Burned ceramic is dark gray to black. Bone and shell were used to make tools, beads, and other ornaments. Bone fragments may also be the remains of meals. Bone found on the surface is usually white, while bone that has been buried will often be tan or yellow in color. Burned bone is dark bluish gray and is easily mistaken for small rocks. Pictured here is a bone owl, which was used to weave baskets and make clothing. A hearth is a fire pit that prehistoric peoples used for cooking and heating. Some hearths are easy to identify, like the circular feature on the left. However, as you can see by these other examples, some hearths are quite difficult to recognize. The deflated hearth in the middle has been deformed or dispersed by wind and water erosion, and the hearth on the right was buried and exposed during an archaeological excavation. Historic artifacts, such as metal cans, glass bottles, ceramic dishes, and food remains may also be discovered, as well as historic features such as roads, water lines, building foundations, trash concentrations, military fighting positions, and tent pad clearings. In this area, historic materials over 50 years old may be associated with historic trails, the Southern Pacific Railroad, mining, homesteading and agriculture, and military training activities. In this region, most of these materials are found on or near the ground surface. However, buried cultural resources have been discovered within the project area and may be encountered during project construction. Resources may have a different appearance depending on where they are found, such as on the ground surface, partially buried, or wholly buried and freshly exposed. Watch out for midden, which is discolored soil, often gray-black and greasy feeling. It can contain ash, charcoal, or bone fragments. When midden is found on the surface, it is often confined to one area and stands out as being much darker than the surrounding soil. When it has been buried and is exposed during excavation or grading, it can appear in a side cut as a distinct layer or lens. Watch out for unusual concentrations of rocks, particularly if they seem to form a circular or linear pattern. Small concentrations of rock with sharp breaks or chipping scars, including chert and obsidian or volcanic glass, may also be archaeological remains. Concentrations of burned rocks, either on the surface or exposed by grading, may represent a cooking feature. A rock cairn, or a pile of stacked rocks, may be Native American in origin or may represent a historic mining claim. Rock concentrations or alignments can occur on the ground surface where they are easily visible or be buried as clusters of rocks that are visible in freshly exposed soil cuts. One or more cultural resource monitors will be on site during ground disturbing activities. Native American monitors will also assist in monitoring to help protect Native American cultural heritage in the project area. In the event cultural resources are unearthed during ground disturbing activities, the cultural resource specialist, the cultural resource monitor, and the Native American monitor have the authority to halt or redirect ground disturbing activities away from the vicinity of the site until the cultural resource specialist has evaluated the find, determined whether the find is culturally sensitive, and designed an appropriate short-term and long-term plan. The cultural resource specialist, in consultation with appropriate agencies and the Native American monitor, will then establish appropriate protocols and procedures for minimizing impacts during construction and future impacts during project operation and maintenance. What do you do if you discover a cultural resource? If for any reason a cultural resources monitor is not present when a cultural resource is exposed, it is your responsibility to stop work. There are 4 steps you should take if you find a cultural resource or anything that you think could be a cultural resource. First, stop work in the immediate area. Second, do not touch it, move it, or disturb it in any way. The reason for this is that the way that it is positioned in the ground provides data vitally important to archaeologists. Third, mark the area with flagging to make sure no one else working in the area disturbs the find. Fourth, immediately contact a cultural resource monitor or your construction supervisor. The cultural resource monitor or cultural resource specialist will examine the find, document and evaluate it, and inform your supervisor when it is okay to resume work in the area. Please remember you are part of the project's compliance team and we need your help in protecting California's cultural heritage. Please show respect for any Native American monitors and their rich cultural heritage. If you think you see an artifact, let your supervisor and the cultural resource monitor or cultural resource specialist know. Do not inspect, pick up, or pocket any artifacts. Please remember, once a prehistoric or historic object, structure, or place has been destroyed, it can never be replaced.